Hello and welcome back to the live series podcast brought to you by Amicus. This is the podcast that gives you insight into the life and role of tech leaders from all over the world. Today I'm joined by Youssef Tharwat, Head of Engineering over at Papershift. Hi Youssef. Oh, you're already waving. I love that. I love that. And I'm like, how are you doing? You okay? But you're just like, yep, I'm here. I'm here for this. Let's go. I love that. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good. That's just such a lovely level to set the podcast at, that energy there with that wave. That's wicked.
Yeah,
Um, so I hadn't really heard of Papershift too much before speaking with you. So for those who, like me, haven't either, do you want to maybe just give us a little bit of insight into Papershift and then a little bit about your role there as well?
yeah, sure. So, Papershift is a software product company based in Karlsruhe in Germany. Mainly, the what the product does is employee shift, leave, time tracking management. Um, to use buzzwords, it's in the cloud. You got to do that on the cloud. You don't have to install really anything. Yeah, that's what Papershift does.
Sweet. So you're head of engineering over there. Um, it sounds like the product of Papershift is super organized, helps people manage themselves and their time. As head of engineering, presumably you have to be uber managed and uber organized and all of the above. So just tell me a little bit about your role there and maybe a little bit about your background, how you got to this point.
Sure. Yeah, so at Papershift, like I said, I am head of engineering. I started as a front-end team lead. Um, and then I think I just eventually did a good job and got promoted into that position. And mainly what I do is just coordinate the teams, work on long-term plans, also align that with the product team. So we work as product and engineering. Um, my team inside is just broken down into sub teams. We have the front end team, we have the back end team. Currently, we are outsourcing our mobile team. Um, yeah. It, I mean, that's how much detail I got into. Let me know if you wanna know a little bit more. I'm not sure where to stop.
No, it's cool. Sometimes I just can't stop people, and that's great. No, it's cool because it's interesting to learn about the different structures within teams, especially when you're the head. So just talk me through, like, yeah, go talk me a little bit through about, did you play a part in creating that structure? Was it already there when you arrived, or kind of how has that developed over time, and how have you found it?
Yeah. So when I joined Papershift, we mainly it worked in a way that it was just called the product team. And in the product team, you had different functions. So you had the front end and the back end, and each had their own sprints. They worked in their own way, but of course they had dependencies. Um, and as time went by, we realized that there are better ways, more efficient ways to structure our team, and that's how we got to cross-functional teams where we actually took a few people from each of the functions, put them in one team, called them a squad, and the idea is that each of the squads are capable of delivering things fully on their own with no external dependencies. So yeah, so they can just move a lot faster. Um, so that's one dimension. And then there's another dimension where there's still the functions of the team front end and back end still there, with their team lead and tech lead there that are directly reporting to me. And the kind of things we discuss together are completely different. They're mainly about engineering, stuff like quality, coverage, what do we plan to do the following years, what kind of technologies. Um, so yeah, that's that's that. Also, one interesting change, which is kind of about what I'll be probably talking a lot about today, which is soft skills. They previously, so it worked in a way that, you know, if you're a senior engineer and you want to be promoted to whatever comes next, it's usually someone who is supposed to work with people a lot more and code a lot less. And we got to a point where realized that that actually doesn't really fit with everyone. You know, you know, fish can't climb trees. They do a lot better in the water. And that's when I just did some research and asked some other people I know, what do they do about that? And then I realized, yeah, there needs to be two tracks for, you know, to support, to be more inclusive, to put people in the right place so they can thrive. And that's where we got to the decision of having two tracks for people to progress.
Yeah. It sounds like you've had a pretty heavy impact on the structure over there as well. So you kind of also segued me into a couple of points that I definitely do want to cover. We'll come to soft skills in a little bit, but I'm dying to know kind of a little bit more about, like you said, that you were promoted internally to get to where you are now. So how is that something that still happens in Papershift? Are you still kind of elevating people within the team? Is it how does it kind of work with your hiring structure, or do you kind of prioritize internal hires first?
Yeah, of course. I mean, when I came to Papershift, that's a culture that was there, and I actually learned that, and I appreciate that a lot. That the first priority is internal people. If for some reason we can't find whatever we need internally, we then, as a second priority, try to hire, in some cases, consult if it's not really necessary to hire someone, just have a consultant give us what we need to know, and then it stays internal. Yeah.
No, that's cool. I think that's a sign of a healthy culture, isn't it? I think when people want to kind of develop within themselves, and there's so many benefits to doing that. It just makes sense, doesn't it? It's the same sort of function here at Amicus. We really, really focus on hiring internally. I think we've had like something stupid, like I think we've had 5 promotions last month or something like that, like just internally. And so it's I 100% agree with everything that you just said, basically.
Yeah, very important.
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of hiring, when you do hire externally, do you find that there's some pitfalls in the hiring, not necessarily your process, but in terms of like what kind of challenges do you come across when hiring externally?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hiring externally means it's always very difficult, because in the end we're people, and it's a group of people that would be working together, and it's just not really only about what you can do as a person, as in like you could use this tool or you could use this language. The success of a hire is dependent on so many other factors, and being able to actually tell and assess and be a true match with someone, that can be hard to do, especially with a very like the tech space is super diverse and super big, with so many backgrounds and so many kinds of people from everywhere, and you just gotta be able to you know, be skilled enough to put those people in the right place from different backgrounds, and make it work, and that's can sometimes be tricky.
I can imagine that's a pretty big challenge. I was speaking to I think one of my previous guests, Sabine Saeed. She runs a globally kind of fully remote team, and with them being global, there's dozens of different cultures and different priorities with people, and that was a really interesting thing to bring up, because it was kind of focused on how do you manage that? How do you approach all these different kind of mindsets? And so let's talk about that a little bit, like, because I think when you think of kind of tech professionals, your instinct isn't to think they must have brilliant soft skills. Like, you think of intelligent people, and sometimes even for lack of a better phrase, a little bit more of an introverted community, perhaps. So tell me kind of what your experience is when let's use interviews as an example, maybe when looking for soft skills, and how can you tell when someone's got decent soft skills?
It's super hard. Let's start with that. It's not easy. But so what I learned is that I need to adjust our hiring process so that it includes that. And I kind of like allocated a lot of time. So during the hiring process, we have allocated time just for behavioral questions, and it's a decent chunk of time. And the questions are designed in a way to assess people for specific traits. And those questions not necessarily are your typical top 10 behavioral questions on Google that you find. No, we actually thought about real life situations where you can come across day to day, and what would you do then? And why would you do that? But then why is that? So like 5 levels of whys deep into their answers. We had this applicant once tell us that the interview process is very unique. It's very philosophical, and he just hasn't experienced that before, which I took that really as a praise. So yeah, that's how we approached it. Approach this this problem.
Yeah, I think I would definitely have taken that as a compliment, to be honest. I think it is refreshing when you're a candidate and you see a different kind of way of interviewing, and I think as well, especially when the focus is on soft skills, it comes across as the company genuinely values their people already, because they want someone who is going to be absolutely on the nail when it comes to getting along with those people. And that's, maybe can be seen as daunting, I guess, to some candidates, but I think the right candidate will see that as a good thing, and see it as a company that genuinely cares about not just who's coming in, but who's already there and how they're going to gel with those individuals, and not just someone that's going to bring results for the company. Just a little bit on that, actually. How do you, is your team remote, or is it hybrid, or
Hybrid.
hybrid? Yeah. So does that come with its own challenges as well, I guess, when you're trying to, obviously you're obviously someone who focuses a lot on communication and enhancing people's soft skills within your team. How do you go about doing that? How do you make people connected?
Super challenging again, especially because we have a hybrid team here in Germany, but also we do also have remote employees in other countries that are in the process of relocating to Germany, which you can imagine takes a lot of time. And during that time, we gotta figure out ways to keep people connected, and yeah. So I think there were 3 aspects to manage that. One is having basically very low context in the company, document everything, document culture, document decisions made. And that's what we do. I mean, we use Notion. We put almost everything we can on Notion, so that things are more asynchronous. People can figure out what it's like through that. The second thing is, of course, the tooling. So asynchronous tooling, you have Slack, Asana, Jira, all that kind of stuff available. The third thing which is actually one of our current projects, is informal communication, which is very important. How do you cover that aspect where you have people talk to each other, but then it's not forced, as in like your manager just wants you to speak, join this coffee chat, and it's in your calendar, which we actually tried but didn't work out. And then I realized that you can't really just or it's just not going to be very genuine or effective. So what we got to is something like a Discord server where, and again, coming back to people who are introverted, they like very much to be in control of how much socializing they can do. So I will socialize when I feel like I want to socialize. And not necessarily, also problem of being in an office is that you're not in control of that, because stuff happens all the time. You want to focus or whatever, or maybe today's you don't feel like it. So having such a space for people to have informal discussions, just chat about stuff, hang out, is very important. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like especially what you were saying there about kind of forced fun and forced conversation, it just does kind of more damage, I suppose, in some certain circumstances, doesn't it? I guess if especially when you're dealing with, like you say, introverts. And so how do you kind of say you have got a team of introverts? Just talk me through an introverted tech professional who has good soft skills. What does that look like?
An introverted tech professional that has good soft skills.
So in terms of if you're kind of so is that possible to kind of be an introvert and have good soft skills?
Yes. I think people like that have a I call it an internal extrovert battery. uh, like how some people, like, they, regardless, I mean, outside of the tech context, in the party or in an outing where there's some people that may seem like very social and very fun, but then actually they really appreciate staying at home and having some time at home and not really going out much. But then when they have to, or they're doing all the extroverted stuff. I don't remember the exact name for this. I read an article about it, but it's basically they have like this small battery of extrovertedness that they consume while being in such places or in such situations. Because soft skills are about communicating and about sometimes very emotionally draining situations where you do need that kind of capacity. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I'm definitely someone who's guilty of only having a small social battery. It definitely runs out from time to time. And especially if you've had a long day at work or something, and then you've got plans in the evening, your battery's kind of already gone. You don't want to go anywhere. I totally get that. Let's just flick back to hiring. How do you set standards when you're hiring? How do you set them? What do they look like? And then how do you maintain them as well?
Mhm. I mean, we've set. I mean, we have our values, and that's something we check for in the hiring process. But on top of our values, we have a competency matrix, which basically define what is a senior or what is an intermediate at Papershift. How does this person should look like from a technical skills level to soft skills level. It contains about 29 skills, things like writing code, software architecture, debugging, and then you have giving and receiving feedback, communication, delivery ability, how reliable are you, your commitments when you make them. So they're about 29, and we use that as a way to assess people. And then actually when we make a hire, we do kind of a calibration phase during people's probation period, where we're calibrating them on the framework, and then we're actually seeing where they are there. Yeah, and we maintain them by, like, if for some reason someone thinks I don't feel very good about this thing or the description of that, maybe let's just try something different. Yeah, we do actually, we had a conversation recently about some of the descriptions of the skills. They didn't feel very right, and we had a feedback round and we adjusted them, so everything is up for discussion. And yeah.
When you're hiring, obviously we covered some like technical stuff there. When you're in terms of someone's personality, how can you tell how somebody is going to perform once you've hired them? Is there a way of sort of knowing? I know you said before we touched on soft skills, but is there an element of predictability in an interview? Do you maybe, I'm obviously not looking for an example, but in the past, in any experience, have you ever had a sort of hire that you've thought, this might, we'll give them a shot, but it might not go ahead? Or do you kind of have an instinct about those things, or is there a way that you can kind of adjust your interviewing?
Of course, I mean there has been situations where it's a very mixed feeling thing, and honestly, usually, like, your gut feeling is right about those things. When it's just mixed, it's just, yeah, probably not a good idea. And I mean, we do have our probation period, because they might not like our culture even when they join, and that's okay. Or we just things don't click. So we do have that period of testing out things, but generally, so we save their time and our time if it just feels not so good for some reason. We just don't proceed. But about the behavioral stuff, yeah. it's
You need to
it's
tell us that pretty much.
no, it's always not an easy thing, but we do our best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can imagine. I like that, short and sweet, very diplomatic.
Yeah.
I've just got two more questions for you this afternoon or this morning,
Mhm.
wherever you are. Honestly, it's so I guess sometimes they'll be in like Austin, Texas, or some of them will be in Sweden or something, and I'm just like, you're going on
Yeah.
my time frame, like, and I'm not. I'm going to be ignorant and refuse to accept anyone else's. It's just too much. Just too much jumping around. Um,
Absolutely.
So obviously it sounds like you're doing a really good job over there at Papershift. I think having a leader who values soft skills and cultural fit so much is so important for a team. So I imagine that they're pretty fond of you as a leader, I'm assuming. But in 3 words, how do you think that they would describe you as a leader?
Yeah. Yeah, that's very tough to answer, but I think I would rather refer to actually some feedback I got. So it is actual feedback. It's just
Sure.
not me thinking of myself like the best person in the world.
Yeah.
So I was told that I'm a calm person. I'm not bossy. So I'm very okay with having someone do something, as long as their expectations, do it your way. I'm okay with that. And actively looking for solutions. which is true. I really in our team. I mean, everyone. We just don't do the passive thing where it's just the way it is, and what can we do about it? So we're generally, all of us, looking for always better ways to do things.
Yeah, I love that. I think I can, as someone who doesn't work for you, I can definitely agree with the calmness around you. You're definitely someone who's laid back in the best way possible. I can imagine, I couldn't imagine you telling anybody off or anything like that for doing something wrong. That's wicked. And I love that you got feedback from your team as well. Not a lot of people kind of go to that instinctive thing. They've always got, like, maybe they might have like 3 words prepared already that they've thought of themselves, but I love that you've actually used real evidence, and you haven't just blown your own trumpet. So I love that. Thank you for that. So my last question, I always close with this one, and it gets some really interesting answers. What kind of advice would you have for tech professionals who want to be where you are today?
Just really, soft skills can be things that are thought as like, that's just a, I don't know, an HR thing, but it's really not. It can go a really, really long way, and can really help you to progress really fast. Just know how to. You don't have to be really, really, really good, but just know how to say the right things, speak with people, communicate right, be honest and transparent, give feedback. It's very important, very cool. At least in Papershift engineering team, we've established that we value that a lot more than technical skills, because in the end, if you're a really really skilled engineer, but you have the wrong attitude, and I'm not talking about Papershift or engineering team in Papershift, just from a perspective of a manager or in any company, that's a lot more harmful to the culture or the place than the value you are actually contributing. So just from a pure objective point of view, plus minus, it's might not be worth it. So
I love that. I love that, because I think it is something that gets overlooked, and that's kind of why I was excited to talk to you about it today, because there is so much focus on on technical ability. I can hear, obviously, I'm marketing, so I'm not one of the recruiters at Amicus, but I can hear a lot of the conversations that they have, and it's obviously going to be orientated around technical ability, but I think one thing that our consultants are particularly good at is kind of spotting people's soft skills, and they'll be really honest as well with candidates and say, you're not quite right for this role, because they can kind of just read people, and I think it's that ability to read people as a leader, and make the right decisions on behalf of your team when hiring, that makes a really good leader. And it sounds like you're doing a really good job over at Papershift. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can hover over the logo in the corner. I think it's this one. It might be that one. I never get that right. Yeah, or it might be up there. I don't know. It might be up there with Youssef. You can hit subscribe. Totally lost my flow there. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and TikTok for updates. Head over to our website, amicusjobs.com, for all of your updates on Python, Golang, JavaScript, and machine learning roles everywhere. Youssef, thank you so much again. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's been really insightful.
thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure.
Mhm.